Hey, my name is Chris Brennan, and this is your year-ahead horoscope and astrology forecast for the zodiac sign of Aquarius for the entire year of 2024. All right, so let's jump right into it. So your main keywords this year, Aquarius, are communication, beliefs, finances, home, children, relationships, health, and self. So those are some of the main themes that are going to come up based on the planetary transits this year, and I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about some of those transits and diving into some of those topics more deeply, as well as giving you time frames. All right, so here's the planetary movements calendar for this year. I'm going to start by talking about the eclipses that are taking place in your 9th and 3rd houses in Aries and Libra. So my primary keyword for these eclipses are major beginnings and endings in communication, beliefs, and travel. So some of the eclipses are taking place in your 9th house, which represents education, philosophy, one's religion, and generally speaking, one's beliefs about the world, which includes one's politics. So with eclipses taking place in this sector of your chart, there's some major beginnings and major endings in this area of your life. So there may be some things that you used to think about or believe about the world that somehow are coming to an ending, but this is opening up a new chapter where there's some other things that you're learning about the world that mark a fresh start for your sort of public outlook and how you look and believe about things. So this can be very good and very eye-opening in terms of education and belief in your personal philosophy of life. For some people, the 9th house has to do with travel, and so there could be a major trip involved, or there could be some sort of expansion of your beliefs that has to do with having an exposure to a foreign culture, or to just somebody or some people that are different from what you grew up with. Let's see. So with all this 9th house activity with respect to your beliefs, this is going to open up also the eclipses in your 3rd house in Aries, which have to do with how you communicate what you believe. So there's going to be some major changes and major beginnings and major endings in terms of your communication style and in terms of how you talk to people and how you present what you know or what you think about the world and the sort of forum in which you present it. The 3rd house also has to do with siblings, neighbors, and extended relatives. So there may be some either major events happening in the lives of those people in terms of major beginnings and major endings, or there may be something about your relationship with them and ending one major chapter in terms of your relationship, but then opening up a new chapter when it comes to your interactions with them at the same time. The 3rd house also has to do with travel, so there could be something involving mobility or getting around your city that's significant at this time as well. So those eclipses are going to be taking place at different parts of the year, but especially in the March-April timeframe, and then again in October when there's an eclipse in Libra on October 2nd. All right, so moving on to other transits, the next area I wanted to talk about is the Saturn transit and the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's happening in Pisces this year, as well as an eclipse that's going to happen later in September. So your Pisces is your 2nd house of finances, money, and possessions. And my primary keyword here is nebulous challenges with finances and possessions this year, primarily because of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, where Neptune represents what's illusory, or it represents idealism, whereas Saturn represents what's real, and it has a sense of being about cold hard facts. So there's some sort of tension here this year where for the past several years, Neptune's been transiting through this house, and maybe you've had a more idealistic or a less grounded approach towards your finances and towards wealth. But starting a year ago, Saturn went into Pisces in March of 2023, and it started a period where you're going to have to get more serious about finances, and where there's some sort of tension that's building between this sort of like idealism or almost like delusion, which is represented by Neptune, versus the cold hard reality of Saturn and the conflict or tension between those two. So sometimes Saturn can bring challenges or surmountable difficulties where financial matters may be a little bit harder to come by for a period of time, or where you run into some obstacles, but through great striving and effort, you're able to overcome them and become stronger as a result of that when it comes to your finances and personal possessions. So some of the Saturn-Neptune tensions are going to peak around the June and July time frame when that conjunction gets really close. And then this area of your life is going to come under much more intense scrutiny and focus around September, when we have a eclipse in Pisces. And at that point, you're going to see a major pivot or a major turning point when it comes to financial matters this year, and some sort of great ending as well as a new beginning. So that's one of the major transits I wanted to highlight about this year. I also want to highlight some of your really positive transits that you have coming up this year. So the first one is Jupiter's transit through your fourth house of home, parents, and private life, where Jupiter is going to conjoin the planet Uranus in April in this area of your life. And my keyword for this is unexpected opportunities with respect to your home, private life, and parents. So for some of you, this is going to represent with Jupiter going through your fourth house, maybe there's some new opportunity to move to a new location or to improve your home and your living situation in some distinct way. The Uranus element of it brings an element of suddenness, of unexpectedness, and of like radical change in some way, but usually in a positive sense, since it's Jupiter that's meeting up with Uranus. For some of you, the fourth house, it will represent your parents and something about your interaction with your parents, and maybe some improvement in terms of your interaction with them, or in terms of something that's happening with their life that's relatively positive at this time. So this transit's lasting for the entire first half of the year, from January all the way through May, and it peaks around the April time frame when Jupiter actually conjoins Uranus. But that's a really good transit for the entire first half of the year. The other really good transit that's going to happen this year is going to happen in the second half of the year, starting in June, when the planet Jupiter will move into Gemini for the second half of 2024, and that's going into your fifth house. And the fifth house represents my keyword for this transit is growth and expansion when it comes to children, creativity, leisurely activities, as well as sex and sexuality. So for some of you, when it comes to the topic of children, this can be something positive coming into your life with respect to children. And for some people, it can be growth and expansion in terms of literally having children at this time. For others, it can be that there's something about your relationship with your children, if you already have some, or something going on in their life that's particularly positive and notable this year, especially starting in June, when a bunch of planets are going to move into Gemini all at the same time. The fifth house also has to do with leisurely activities like fun and games, and the things that we do in order to have fun and to bring joy into our life. And with Jupiter moving into this area in the entire second half of the year, it could be a good time to take up a new hobby, or to find some things that you just enjoy or you have fun with that bring joy into your life, because you'll be more successful in finding things and more successful in finding joy during the second half of the year than at other times in your life. The fifth house also has to do with sex and sexuality. So there could be either a new romantic partner that you particularly enjoy and have fun with in the second half of the year, or there could be something about your current relationship where maybe you move into a new phase or you move into a new chapter of that relationship when it comes to your sex life that just tends to go particularly well or particularly positive. So that's something to keep an eye out for in terms of looking for new opportunities for growth in this area during the second half of the year. But especially focusing on June. All right, so there's that one. The next one is, I do wanted to talk about, there's going to be a Mars retrograde towards the end of the year, and that's going to be taking place in Leo and Cancer, which is your seventh house of relationships and your sixth house of work and health. So my primary keyword for this is tensions surrounding relationships, work, and health. So Mars retrograde transits are tricky because sometimes they bring up tensions or issues with anger or issues with conflict in the area of the chart that it goes through. So for you, it's going to be going through the area that has to do with relationships, the seventh house, which could indicate a greater propensity for fights or conflict, or even the potential for severing and separation when it comes to relationships during the course of this transit. So it's important when you have transits like that just to go into it knowing that ahead of time, and then exercising some caution or some restraint, especially if you find yourself more irritable or more angry than usual and getting into more fights than usual, or if you find that your partner, for example, is more angry or getting into fights with you more than typical. So the danger here is that you need to be careful that if you start a conflict, that you show some restraint, because sometimes conflicts started during this transit can blow up into much bigger or much more long-term conflicts than you might anticipate at first. So the main piece of advice is just to either try to exercise restraint and caution, or at least go into any fights or conflicts knowing that if you start something, that it could turn into a much bigger thing than you might intend at first. So some of this energy is also applied to your sixth house of work and health. So there could be some conflicts at work or involving subordinates or people that work for you, like assistants. And also the sixth house, because it has to do with health, can indicate some irritation or some annoyances or even some challenges and tensions that arise when it comes to health and health issues. So if there's anything that you can do to address some of those things right from the start, and instead of letting health issues linger, then that would be advised. The same with workplace disputes at the same time. So those are some of the transits that are happening in terms of the Mars retrograde during the course of especially the last 2 to 3 months of this year, and some of the potentials for that transit. And then finally, the last transit I wanted to mention is that Pluto is actually going into Aquarius this year for good, and that's going to be the beginning of a very long-term transit that signifies major transformative experiences with respect to your mind, your body, and your sense of self. So Pluto transits can be kind of intense and kind of deep. They force us to go deeper into ourselves, and sometimes when we go within ourselves, we unlock deeper transformations in terms of understanding who we are, what we're about in the world, and in terms of our perception of ourself and what we're doing here. That's the core meaning of this transit for you, of Pluto going into your rising sign or into your first house. So for some people, this is going to be transformations and awakenings that involve your mind, and for others, it's going to be transformations that involve your body. So during the course of this, sometimes there's things that have to move into the past and sort of like pass away in our life in order to make room for other new things and other new realities that we then have to adjust to and accommodate in order to understand the new things that are in front of us. But the primary keyword is just major changes and major transformations to your sense of self, and the sort of uniting and relationship between your mind and your body, and what the interaction is between those two. So, and that's a major transit that begins this year that's going to last for quite a while after 2024, but you should pay attention to it and pay attention to any changes that start happening in that area, because they may be a preview of some other major changes that'll come up in the future, in the long term, as this transit progresses. So, all right, I think that's the last major transit that I wanted to mention for you for 2024. So here's a list which shows the major transits that I just mentioned during the course of the year. Here's a list that gives some specific dates for some of those transits and the time frames in which they're going to be relevant. Here's a diagram that tells you about the Mars retrograde period and dates. And otherwise, I think that's it for this horoscope for Aquarius for 2024. So, for a more detailed breakdown of the transits this year, check out my 2024 Year Ahead Astrology Forecast on YouTube. Otherwise, for good dates next year to do different things, I just released my 2024 Electional Astrology Report, where I went through and I picked out some of the most fortunate or lucky dates during the course of the next year. So I have a 15% off New Year's sale that's currently running on that report, and you can find out more information at theastrologypodcast.com/2024 report. Otherwise, I think that's it for this horoscope, so good luck Aquarius next year, and I'll see you again at the end of the year for horoscopes for 2025. All right, good luck and take care. If you appreciate the work I'm doing here on the podcast and you'd like to find a way to support it, then consider becoming a patron through my page on patreon.com. In exchange, you'll get access to some great subscriber benefits. You can find out more information at patreon.com/astrologypodcast. Shout out to our sponsor for this episode, which is the Chani app, the #1 astrology app for self-discovery, mindfulness, and healing. You can download it on the Apple App Store or on Google Play, or for more information, visit app.chani.com. Special thanks to all the patrons that helped to support the production of this episode of the podcast through our page on patreon.com. In particular, shout out to the patrons on our producers tier, including patrons Christy Moe, Ariana Amour, Mandy Ray, Angelique Nambo, Issa Sabah, Jake Otero, Jeannie Marie Kaplan, and Melissa Delano. If you're looking for a reliable astrologer to get an astrological consultation with, then we have a new list of astrologers on the podcast website that we recommend for readings. Find out more information at theastrologypodcast.com/consultations. The astrology software that we use and recommend here on the podcast is called SolarFire for Windows, which is available for the PC at alabe.com. Use the promo code AP15 to get a 15% discount. For Mac users, we recommend a software program called AstroGold for Mac OS. You can find out more information at astrogold.io, and you can use the promo code AstroPodcast15 to get a 15% discount. If you're really looking to expand your studies of astrology, then I would recommend my Hellenistic Astrology course, which is an online course on ancient astrology, where I take people through basic concepts up through intermediate and advanced techniques for reading birth charts. You can find out more information at courses.theastrologyschool.com. And finally, thanks to our sponsors, including the Mountain Astrologer magazine, which is a quarterly astrology magazine, which you can read in print or online at mountainastrologer.com. And the Northwest Astrological Conference, which is happening both in person and online, May 23rd through the 27th, 2024. You can find out more information at norwac.net.